Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are going to tackle what can be a really tricky part of your A-level sociology exam, that 10-mark theory question. My goal here is to give you a foolproof strategy to absolutely nail it and get those top marks, every single time. So, let's get right into it. So here's our game plan. First, we'll get to grips with the rules of the question itself. Then, we'll decode a real sample question piece by piece. After that, we'll walk through the whole thinking process to build two perfect answer paragraphs. And you are definitely going to want to stick around to the end because I have an absolute gold star tip that honestly could be a real game changer for you. All right, first things first, we have to know exactly what we're up against. So let's break down the rules for this specific question.
Okay, so this question is going to pop up on both paper 1 and paper 3. And you know what the examiner's trying to do here? It's simple, really. They just want to test your pure, straight-up knowledge of sociology. Your job is to give them two clear, separate, and really well-explained points. It is all about showing what you know.
But, and this is a big but, if you want to get into those top mark bands, the 8s, 9s, and 10s, there is one rule you absolutely cannot break. I'm not kidding. This is probably the single biggest mistake students make on this question. That's it. Seriously? No. Evaluation. Unlike those big 20 markers where you're meant to be weighing up strengths and weaknesses, this question gives you 0, and I mean 0 points for it. Doing it just wastes your time. Your only job here is to outline and explain. End of story. Okay, so now that we know the rules of the game, let's actually put them into practice. We're going to take a sample question and learn to read it just like an examiner would.
Okay, here it is. Now, the big temptation here is to just start writing down everything you've ever learned about structuralism, right? Don't do that. The real key is to break the question down into its core components first.
And here's how we do it. It's a pretty simple 3-step process. First, you identify concept A. In this case, that's structural theories. So think functionalism, Marxism, that kind of thing. Next, you identify concept B, which is contemporary society. So what's life like today? Social media, diversity, all that stuff. And then the third step is finding the connection. Your whole task is to explain why concept A is limited when you try to use it to understand concept B. So the big question is, how do we actually find those connections? Well, this next bit is all about the brainstorming, the thinking process you should go through before you write a single word of your answer. Right, think of this like you're sketching it out on a piece of paper. On one side, you jot down all the usual criticisms of structural theories. They have these big, sweeping, grand narratives. They can be a bit one-size-fits-all. They often overstate things like class or gender roles. Then, on the other side, you list features of life today. We have way more diversity, more individual choice, and those big stories don't really hold up like they used to. Now, can you start to see the links? We can connect the one-size-fits-all idea to greater diversity, or we can link overstating class roles to the idea of fluidity of identity. And just like that, you found your 2 points. Awesome. So let's grab one of those links and start building our first paragraph. We'll use the idea that some structural theories are just plain outdated, and we'll apply it to functionalism. Okay, take a second to read through that. It's a really strong paragraph, isn't it? But the important question is, why is it so good? What makes it work? Well, let's pull it apart and see. So first off, it makes a really clear point right at the start. Bam! Functionalism is outdated. Super simple. Then it immediately backs this up with proper sociological evidence. It doesn't just say families. It uses the specific key terms the examiner is looking for, like nuclear family, instrumental role, and expressive role. That right there shows you really know your stuff. And this is where it really comes together. It makes that crucial link to contemporary society by contrasting the old school theory with modern life. Things like family diversity and that fantastic concept of families of choice. And finally, it sticks the landing with a clear conclusion, explicitly saying the functionalist view is no longer adequate. It's a perfect formula. Point, evidence, link, conclusion. Right, so we nailed the first paragraph. Can we do it again? Of course we can. Let's build our second point now, but this time we'll use Marxism as our example. Here we go again. This paragraph is arguing that structural theories often have this one-size-fits-all problem. And it's using Marxism's focus on social class as the prime example. Then, it cleverly contrasts this with postmodernist ideas and the way media shapes who we are today. So let's break this one down too. The point is, again, crystal clear. They use a one-size-fits-all approach. And the evidence? It's Marxism's intense focus on social class as the key to understanding everything. That's the core of the criticism. And here comes that all-important link. It brings in postmodernist thinkers who argue that class is dead, and it explains why, pointing to the decline of those big meta-narratives. The conclusion ties it all up in a neat bow, explaining that in our world, which is totally saturated with media, our identity is way more complex. We can build it from things other than just our class. You see? It's the same structure, just a different theory, and it gets you the same top marks. Okay, we've built the perfect answer. But now it's time for that tip I promised you. This is the thing that can give you a massive strategic advantage when you're sitting in that exam hall. This is what really separates the good students from the great ones.
You're ready for this? Here it is. For these theory questions on paper 1 and paper 3, you can pull in knowledge and examples from any topic across the entire A-level sociology course. Family, beliefs, crime, stratification, it is all fair game. Just let that sink in for a second. What does this actually mean? It means if you're sitting paper 1 and the topic on the paper is education, you do not have to use an education example. Just like we did, you can pull in an example from family to answer the question. This is amazing because it lets you play to your strengths. You can use the topic you know best, and it shows the examiner you have this fantastic big picture understanding of the whole subject. So the most important takeaway here is this. When you walk into that exam, you have a much, much bigger toolkit than you probably realize. Your entire 2 years of study are at your disposal for this one question. You are not trapped inside a little topic box. And there you have it. That is the complete method for acing the 10-mark theory question. We've broken down the rules, the structure, and the ultimate strategy to give you an edge. So I guess the only question left to ask is, what 2 ideas are you going to connect?